My previous town is a sprawling masterpiece that uses over 4,000 tiles, but I want a challenge, so I'm trying to fully upgrade a village built solely on a long but thin strip of land. That means cramming enough houses for 300 villagers and an economy that can provide for them all into just 1,000 tiles. I already don't know if that's possible, but that doesn't stop me from maxing out the difficulty as I get started. The looming threat doesn't stop villagers from singing merry tunes as they work around the building site for a simple town center. Upgrading this is the main obstacle to maxing the town out, though the finished product is modest for now. They set up a hunter's cabin and forager's shack so a couple of villagers can rove out for food. Basilia starts to look for deer, while Ura instead begins chopping firewood that wards off the cold when they take shelter in shacks that just barely finish as snow starts to fall. Spring's thaw brings migrants that wander up and ask for shelter. They lost 3 to winter's bitter chill, and they're happy to help here if it means they won't be losing more. Feeding them requires a couple more food production buildings, including a fishery that has to be told to work at a lake to the south. But fish, meat, and forage are basically the entire extent of the village's available diet. New migrants do mark the first step towards upgrading that town center to the second of 4 tiers, which each require more people and more resources than the last. But not every villager can be there to see it. An explorer heads out a little bit too far and is mauled by a wolf. She's diseased and bleeding out, but the former wins the race and Arahan falls to rabies as the first victim in this land. This is a good time to bring up that this entire challenge is a race against time. Everyone's going to be buried after they pass in a graveyard that takes up space. A small one is easy to build and takes 60 of the lost. While that might sound like a lot for now, the village is going to have hundreds of people and even more enemies that try to kill them. This is just the first of many graves, meaning that I can't take my time to do everything perfectly. I don't have an exact layout in mind, but the general strategy is to keep the economy to the west and houses and a nearby market to stock them to the east. People don't want to live near some particular buildings, and this avoids that being an issue. Although migrants continue to arrive, the occasional wolf attack kills a settler and stops the village from growing too quickly. Una is the next victim to drop to rabies, but raiders arrive to try and also be a thorn in Canterbury's side soon after. Fortunately, they don't last long. 2 scouts alone aren't a threat, but their absence back at the bandits' camp will likely cause more unwanted visitors to come in the near future. The 5th winter thaws, but the settlement has made little progress. Migrants are rare despite plentiful food and housing. They know that trying to build a settlement like this is just stupid. Maybe growing the economy some will help draw more migrants. Fields are space inefficient, but that won't matter until much later on. The villagers plan to plant flax to eventually make outfits, and even that alone is enough to draw migrants. Now the village only needs 2 more people for the next milestone. Oh look, 2 more people! Okay game. Okay. It takes another half year for someone else to wander up. They don't even want to join, but everyone grabs them and tosses them at the town center to get started anyways. The building finishes pretty quickly, and while that was eminently doable, the next upgrade requires 5 times as many people and far more materials. Things are about to get interesting. The upgraded town center immediately gives them more options, though not for food, where the potential upgrades require lots of space for farms or trees. A wagon shop only needed so that they can build a clay pit to the far west is the first new building, but they also build a festival pole to celebrate their accomplishments so far, a trading post to buy and sell goods they can't find or make here, and a workshop for weavers to actually make clothes in from the flax. They even get a soap maker shop. It's been 6 years without a good wash that's now long overdue. You're supposed to slowly acquire all of this stuff, but they stockpiled a lot of planks while waiting for those last few migrants. Entertainment and decor like the festival pole make nearby houses more desirable, but not many houses fit in this thin strip around them. Despite that, working to maximize the number of houses these hit is critical, and it's gonna be one of the hardest problems going forward. More desirable houses can be upgraded, and upgraded houses fit more people in the same space, plus they're required to upgrade the town center further. A schoolhouse to help with that nestles in near the market nicely, which will boost property value and help educate people on things like what property value is. Someone educated there can also work in the new healer travelers hut nearby to hopefully stop people from dying to rabies or other diseases. But houses alone are not enough. People have other needs as the city grows to start rivaling some of the smaller towns in the kingdom they came from. Clay pottery is enough to sate them for now, but they'll need more in the future, which means producing enough to sell off the excess to make up for the missing supply chains that space stops them from having. Okay, I've never carted someone around in a wheelbarrow, but I am pretty sure that that is not how you do it. They were injured in a raid, and though I usually cut most of these out, the growing town attracts them more and more frequently. Not being able to wall the outside off makes defending themselves from raiders that steal food and other items hard, and it's little surprise that the surviving bandits tell everyone else that we're easy pickings. That threat doesn't stop more villagers from arriving, though it's been 13 years and the village is only a sixth of where it will need to be. Oh, that helps though. What doesn't help is that the village is nearing in on the end of their strip of land. Roads take 2.5 units of work per tile, so 100 tiles wide is 250 units of work. This tower marks the limit, and it is way too close. With free space already almost out, the rampant expansion is coming to a close. It's time to start juggling buildings around and planning things out for the endgame. This is 24 houses in total, while the next town center upgrade needs 25 upgraded houses, then at least another 6 to fill out the 150 people that the village needs. Upgraded houses each need a desirability of at least 30, which small gardens and shrines nestled around them help accomplish. That means we only need more people, but food's already becoming an issue. Villagers are having to roam further and further to find enough. Buying a couple cows from traders for all the gold the town has will help with food eventually, though they're going to be raised and allowed to breed until the herd is looking a lot healthier instead of slaughtered immediately. The town crests 100 villagers in time, but the barns will be ready before that population grows too much. Though, wow, fitting 200 more people in when space is already running low seems tenuous at best. Making room for houses on the east involves relocating economic buildings all the way to the west, then Tetrising everything together perfectly to have any hope of managing everything we need. At least there are more resources to the far west to help feed everyone. Raiders want to make things even harder. Worse, they hit from the far east, away from the town center that everyone's garrisoned in to beat back previous raids. Villagers get caught out, the market is vulnerable to pillagers, and the limited defenses are quickly raised. Villagers pile one of them, but their armor keeps them going through the civilians' punches for far too long. Everyone's forced to flee towards the town center to let the archers there shoot down the alleyways at the enemies. It works, and the raiders flee beneath a barrage of arrows, but they raised a full city block. Defensive towers would help more in the future, but that takes precious tiles away that are already in short supply. But considering the alternative is using those tiles for a graveyard, the decision itself is easy to make, and towers go in on both sides of the city. Another set of raiders arrived to test them soon after. Unfortunately, they come right after we sold 1,500 gold worth of items at the trading depot in the west. There are plenty of lookout towers, but the raiders weather the arrows, make a break for the trade depot, and rob the gold ingots we just acquired while leaving the merchant's gear alone. They make off with 1,500 gold that we actually needed because all of these lookout towers are expensive. The soldiers draw salaries, and it's putting the village in bankruptcy. A normal village could fend off these attacks with a couple of towers behind walls, but this plethora of towers is simultaneously necessary, expensive, yet insufficient. They need room for walls to hide behind, but there just isn't space for that. Turning off a couple of them until the next raid will hopefully help with gold. What's the worst that can happen? The raids, wolves, and time are all starting to take their toll. The journey's not even close to half done yet, but the graveyard's starting to fill up pretty rapidly. More raiders come, and though the towers do an admirable job, the bandits still manage to make off with gold ingots yet again. Some of them are dropped by the dead as they flee beneath arrow fire, but more still are stolen away. We need the weapons and upgrades that come with the next tier of town center. A fresh wave of migrants gives us enough people to make the upgrade, but the thousands of plundered gold mean that we're too poor. It takes a full year for a trader to arrive that wants to buy the goods, but after selling enough of them, the tier 3 town center is eventually finished, and it is beautiful. Now there's only one more step. We need 300 people. Wait, 400? You need 400 people to... upgrade? I checked my old footage and I am not crazy. It used to require 300 people, but now you need 400. I'd guesstimated that 300 was just barely possible, but that many? On top of all the other stuff? Even upgraded houses that hold 6 people each will still need over 600 tiles just to home 400 people. That's as far as this road reaches if I stack them 3 wide without any room for markets or desirability boosting buildings. That only leaves a few hundred tiles for everything else, including food, economic buildings, the town center, defenses. I really don't think this is possible, but I mean, I'm not about to stop trying. Which is a bad time for the one compost gatherer to prove insufficient. The farm has to get cut in half to make room for a second, but problems hardly stop there. I turn off some of the guard towers to save money we can't afford moments before a raid arrives. At least they come from the north, where they'll be in range of the garrison town center. Or not. Fortunately, 10 archers arrive before the raid does, and they make quick work of the attackers. It's actually the best we've handled a raid in a while. Maybe I should underfund my defenses more? Doing that might actually allow me to get all these new upgrades I just unlocked, because they require a ton of money that I just don't have. I try to save money on unimportant things like healthcare, but someone immediately gets sick afterwards, and then people start threatening to go on strike, so it's turned back on pretty quickly. Selling wood and other resources harvested by an unemployed army of laborers is the main way we have to actually make any gold, but it's subject to which traders show up, since some of them don't actually want to buy the goods. At least the barn is finally full of juicy cows that provide just as much food per tile as hunters do without using arrows, although swapping over entirely is impossible. We need arrows for things like raiders and their battering ram. The towers are all active before they arrive, but the enemies mob them in moments. You're supposed to have walls to funnel them and melee soldiers to greet them there, but I don't have the gear to equip them or the space for a barracks. The battering ram knocks down tower after tower after tower. Civilians try to mob it to beat it back with their bare fist, and though they actually manage to get it to run off, dozens die beneath the raiders' blades, and the remaining civilians are forced to flee. Garrisoned archers in the town center try and fight back, and they do a good job, but to the east, the defensive towers are too few to finish the raiders, and while the town center itself is safe, raiders continue sacking buildings to the east. All those dead villagers mean that the housing shortage isn't actually that bad, but this town is circling the drain. Without any guard towers, the remaining raiders reap havoc. Half the houses are gone, and this village isn't going to recover. Even if it did, I don't see a way to defend against this or larger raids in the future. At its peak, the village had just over 150 people, but the need for and cost of defenses outpaced what everyone can produce. I'm going to go ahead and say it's impossible to do this on max difficulty, but that's not enough for me. I want to know how many people I could fit in if I don't have to deal with raiders. This is Danbury, and it might look kind of familiar. I started over and remade the entire city up till where Canterbury fell on peaceful mode. It's got a similar layout with a couple notable improvements. Each of these columns now have 2 houses and 2 food gatherers to avoid wasting a few tiles on either side that happened with the old strategy of having 3 houses side by side. This does require more desirability boosting buildings since there are more columns of houses in total, but it's going to be more space efficient and it'll feed more people. The theater Canterbury never got to build goes in the middle of it all. That and a couple of upgraded desirability buildings mean that a few houses finally have the needed desirability to upgrade, though they will need to be stocked with 3 different types of food, which is actually a big issue. I don't have access to grains, and everything but protein is in short supply. A nearby pub should make most other homes that desirable, though it won't actually stock any booze. That means it's pure random chance when a house is stocked with enough to upgrade, but it isn't too long before the first homestead upgrades into a large house that fits 6 people. There is one more upgrade after this, but not until you get the max level town center in the first place, so it's not gonna happen. Fortunately, homes only get abandoned if the desirability is bad, so it doesn't matter if these places only eat protein going forward. Still, 400 people, 6 per home, that's 67 homes, and at 9 tiles each, it's going to be brutal. Columns of houses that don't have food stores are given gardens to help homes that are further away from amenities, since so many are close to that 65 desirability cutoff needed to upgrade them. Weavers and flax fields are tossed aside to instead import outfits using gold gained by selling logs and planks. The keen-eyed might realize that I accidentally curved the road while marking the corners, but the entire town is still 10 tiles tall at every point, and the mistake doesn't actually make the challenge any easier. Also, the game's really starting to lag at this point, so pardon the frame drops. I balance space for amenities to upgrade homes versus just jamming more of them in, move the town center and market over as unnecessary economic buildings are purged, and struggle to provide food for everyone despite the extra hunters. Everything nearby is being utilized, but that's just barely sufficient. The max population continues creeping upwards as homes are upgraded, but food production itself largely plateaus. I actually need to resort to buying food, which is horribly expensive. We go through almost 400 food a month at this point, so 100 jars of preserves will only last a week. Dozens of hunters each bring home a couple hundred units of meat per year. That's more than the foragers bring, and they work together to try and mitigate this, but even the redistributed network of them barely manages to bring back enough to stay afloat. They do eventually manage to pedal their way upwards though, and stock a full month's worth of food for the first time in years. People aren't on starvation rations anymore in this utter utopia. It's enough to bring a few more villagers until, a few years and 20 extra people later, consumption catches up to them as they put back on the pounds they lost while food was scarcer. Meanwhile, there's not really any room to actually get more. All the nearby deer are basically being spawn camped, and nearby produce is gathered as quickly as it grows. There's no more room for extra food shelters, and urbanization is so bad that rats are starting to infest the land. Dealing with those takes more space, and though one of these isn't much of an issue now, it's gonna become more of one as time passes. One more wave of migrants arrives, but that's the limit of what food is gonna support. A few more home upgrades over time when traders with plenty of food arrive might let the population cap reach 250, but 300 is out of reach, and feeding 300 people with what little space remains seems impossible even on this idyllic map. This has been a ton of fun, but I'm gonna go ahead and call this challenge impossible. If you like this video, make sure to check out a similar challenge I did in Going Medieval, a 3D colony sim. If you think I'm missing something big that might make this possible, let me know in the comments. If I still did way better than you thought was possible here, drop this video a like, then subscribe so you don't miss the next one. It's also a huge help for a channel like mine.